You're listening to the Myerson Line. Life cycles, bicycles, fast lines, and hot takes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Myerson Line. We are part of the Wide Angle Podium Network, which includes the Slow Ride podcast, Kids Don't Follow, Crosshairs Radio, and the Honest Bicycle program. I'm Adam Myerson. Tonight, I described you as the irrepressible Cait Dooley. I couldn't remember what I called you. Irrepressible. That was good. Hi, Cait. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Adam.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I feel bad for the people who are only going to be listening later because they won't be able to take in your amazing pink mermaid hair and matching glasses. You've really been killing it on the hair front lately, so for all those who tuned in, get the benefit of the visual. I hope I look equally fetching.
You look ravishing, I would say.
Thank you.
Even without your glasses, I know that, you were worried about them. You can put them back on. The glare's not that bad. Okay, it's a little bad.
Is that annoying? It's terrible, right?
We have the same glasses, though, so that's what I don't understand.
Well, the secret is Zenny.com, of course. And I was like, when I got these, they were like $15, and I didn't think they'd become my daily drivers. They were going to be my third pair of glasses, and then they're both my most comfortable glasses. And then people liked them for some. I kept getting compliments on them, and I'd be like, "Really? You what? These are like my joke glasses." So, thanks for not wearing your aqua glasses. Well, thank you. I was surprised. I feel like I'm getting away with it more than I am pulling it off. But your whole ensemble has been like color coordinated lately. Once you went full like sea punk, unicorn, mermaid, pink and green and blue.
I usually try to wear like all black or gray or something, and then let the hair and the glasses do the thing, because I mostly just own black clothing, let's be honest. But thank you.
Yeah, no, it's so then it's like trim. Yeah, no, it works. This wasn't meant to be a fashion episode. We could have a fashion episode, but we're going to definitely talk about bikes. I mean, fashion's important. We certainly should have some fashion episodes. But basically what we've been doing on the show is, I feel like I'm parading my friends, bringing all my friends on board, people that I think are compelling and interesting and whose stories I like and think other people would appreciate too. And I think, why I wanted you on the show is I think you have a strong social media presence and you have an important role in the bike industry. And you do have a lot of friends and people who maybe are acquaintances and aren't friends and have a sense of who you are. But I know you. And even then, I think I probably still don't know you as well as some other people do, even though we're very, very close friends. And so I want to give people an opportunity to actually know you, hear your story. Like I know your background and and actually want to hear it again. It's interesting for me to go through that with you. And so you were next, and you were free, although we had to keep you up. Thanks for staying up late for us.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, this is like pretty much bedtime right now. So I'm like legitimately drinking coffee because I was like, I'm not going to make it. I got up at 4:00 this morning. So
did you nap before the show?
I thought about it, but I decided to power through it. I believe in myself.
Yeah. I'm not sure if coffee is really the best approach, honestly. I think it's going to kick in right when we finish, and then you're not going to be able to go to sleep.
Oh, this is like towards the bottom of it. I pre-gamed it.
Okay, good.
Podcasted. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm sure the listeners are pre-game for it. I mean, it's some tailgating going on. So let's start by talking about who you are in terms of like a bio, like a job title. If I went to your Wikipedia page, do you have a Wikipedia page?
I do not have a Wikipedia page.
You're gonna have to make one for you.
I'm not like you. I don't have a wiki page. I know you have one.
Well, someone's probably working on it right now that we've mentioned it.
Probably. So I work for GT Bicycles as a product manager. I work on pavement bikes and women's bikes. So pavement means basically anything from comfort bikes to road bikes, commuter bikes, that type of thing. And then all of our women's product, whether that's, a mountain bike or a road bike or anything.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely will want to talk more about that because I even have like some GT questions because I think GT as a brand, in addition to your role at GT, is actually interesting. And we should I'm skipping ahead, but I think we should have Todd Saplavy on the show at some point to talk about that. So, John Verheuel's comment, seriously, who is this MC and why is he talking more than Cait? Because haven't you figured this out? This is my show.
It's the Myerson Line.
And I use the guest. Yes, I use the guest as my excuse to have an opportunity to talk. That's the show. Duh. Go on, Cait. I was going to talk about.
Do you want to hear more about my job, or I'll talk a little bit about?
No, I want to. Well,
what do you want to know?
No, don't talk about your job yet. Well, I want to consider. I want to finish your bio.
Okay, so finish my bio. So,
like, I
work at GT Bikes.
GT product manager. Yeah. What's your job title at GT?
Product manager. That is my global product manager. If you want to get really efficient.
That's global. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. I knew product manager, but I thought you were a global product manager, but then I didn't want to assign that to you and have you be like
worldwide.
I put cancer survivor in your bio because I think that's important.
And also true.
I think you think that's important.
Yeah, it's important to me.
Sure. Factually accurate. Yeah, exactly. You're an athlete. I consider you an athlete, and that's part of your identity, I believe, as much as anything else.
Yeah, it was actually interesting when we were like G-chatting about that. It was, I don't know, it was cool, I guess, for me to see that you said that because like I'm still in this phase right now, and we can get into that later. Like after cancer, where I'm having like a really hard time. Like I'm an athlete again, but it feels like I was on pause for a super long time. So it's cool for like someone outside to be calling me that. Like obviously I'm not anywhere near a pro athlete or an elite athlete, but I feel like one. Like I've actually been thinking that lately about myself, which is new for me in the last little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of your identity. And I mean, I think, again, we're skipping ahead a little bit, but like, when I saw you at Winding Trails, I hadn't seen you in person for a little bit, and I knew that things were starting to get a little better for you, but you were radiant. Like you were busy running the course while we were racing, but you looked so fit and so energetic and glowing in a way that I hadn't seen you look in quite a while. It was very encouraging. I mean, I was happy to see you anyway, but I was also just happy to see you look the way that you did and sort of give off the energy that you were giving off. It was really great.
Thanks. I really enjoyed scaring you in the woods because it was like, who is this person that's like yelling at me? And I did that all day. It was super fun. But that was my favorite because you were like, what? What is Cait doing just randomly on the backside of the woods at this race? Right.
Did you see me just start laughing? Did you see me like turn my head and be like, hey, what are you? Did you teleport here? I don't understand. Yeah, it was very out of context for me. I mean, but of course it made sense. I was like, oh, I'm in Connecticut. But you could be in Taiwan at any given moment, or
it's true. I could be anywhere.
The odds that you actually are home. Yeah, yeah.
I'm my own Carmen Sandiego.
It seems like that sometimes. All you guys who have bike industry jobs like yours, I think it's like that, and so we'll talk about that too. I put nerd in there because you're smart. I don't know if people know how smart you are. And I think that's something that I want to talk about. I want to talk about, your accelerated path through school and how that's impacted sort of who you are as a person now. That's the story that you probably wouldn't tell anyone unless I made you to, but if you don't mind, I would like to tell that part of your story because I think it's a big part of who you are now and how you got sort of where you are and how you got there as you are, I guess you could say. It's part of your journey, and I think it's an important part of your journey. It's always an interesting story. I think accelerated students are always weird the way like only children are weird. And so I want to talk about that.
You're right. I wouldn't bring that up myself, but we can talk about that for sure.
Yeah. And I put best friend on the list because I didn't just mean that you were a best friend of mine, which you are. You're a best friend to, I think, many people. I think there are a number of people who would say that they could call you in the middle of the night out of the blue for anything, and you would drop everything and be there for them. You have certainly been a best friend to me, and I think to other people in our group of friends. And so that's also how I think of you and how I've observed you with other people.
Thought I was going to make longer in this podcast before tearing up, but I'm not successful.
Yes! A little checkbox. Make Cait cry.
I mean, you knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. I didn't think it would be this soon, but I'm like, okay, lock it up, Dooley. Sure. Keep going, Adam.
Well, I know you don't really like to talk about yourself, but also I think what's really surprising is that you cried before I did. We should have had a
we should have. We didn't plan for this.
Yeah. Who can make the other person cry first?
I'll make you cry. Like, I'm not worried about it. So.
Yeah. It's just a stupid podcast, but it means everything. Okay, so let's go for. I think that was. Did you want to add anything to that bio? Did I leave anything out?
No. I think that covers all the fun stuff. For those of you who can't see me, I also happen to be a woman, so that's a fun fact. But that's it.
we won't make you prove it. We'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
In this current climate of bathroom permissions. Well, and we will talk about that. And I don't want to skip ahead to it too far, but we're probably going to talk about that at for my sake and not for yours. And I'll explain that when we get there, because I'm interested, not because you wanted to talk about it necessarily. So that will come up, I think. And for the people who are tuning in live, certainly feel free to ask questions, leave comments. If I can integrate those questions into the show, I will. If I can't, I might have to ignore them, but I'll do my best to get to some audience questions, as long as I can obviously get to my list. So with that in mind, I have liked starting the podcast with stories of how I first met my guest. Do you remember how we met?
I feel like we've had this conversation before.
Really? I don't remember having it with you, but I'm curious about.
I feel like we tried to remember, and I think you remembered, and I didn't. But yeah. I do remember, yes and no. So we kind of knew each other on the periphery on the internet, but I think the first time we actually met, we got coffee at I can't remember the place in downtown Boston. That Alex worked there.
Boston.
Yeah.
Boston Coffee.
And
Boston Coffee.
Yeah. Boston Common Coffee.
Boston Common.
I think that was the first time we really met.
I couldn't remember if that was the first time we met, like, proper. Like, I felt like that was the first time for sure that we actually, like, had a real conversation and got to know each other. But
I think we met, like, passing, like, whatever that you do at races. But the first time we actually, like, face-to-face had a real conversation and, like...
We met for coffee.
Met for coffee. Like, that's what we did. We actually just met for coffee. And
yeah. Yep, that's right.
Because you had a dentist appointment, I think.
Oh, I would have been down there because I was seeing Colt McElwain's mom was my dentist at Devonshire, and her office is in Downtown Crossing. That's right.
Okay, yeah, and I was working right over there at the time, so that makes sense.
Oh, right, yeah, that's right. And that meeting was really the beginning of something, because I think we had existed on the periphery. You're right, of each other, and without actually having like really talked, and meeting for coffee started what I think is a really great friendship. Like in that meeting, we immediately set a tone for a friendship, I remember that conversation and walking away thinking like, I just made a really good friend. A friendship that's going to really turn into something. And of course it did. I don't remember how you, I don't know if it went that way for you. but certainly that's was for me.
For me, for those of you that don't know me super well, I'm definitely the I have like my 3 or 4 people or whatever it is. I'm very introverted, and I have a very good read on people. I think sometimes I'm wrong though, but I definitely got that feeling. I mean, that's why we're still friends today, and that's why we kept talking and meeting up after dentist appointments downtown.
Yeah, my best bros are all ladies, and
my best bros are bros.
It's match made in heaven. And then, so we're in the same circle of friends for a while, but then I think the next big thing is we took an awesome road trip. That's where the hashtag Get in the Van got started.
Yes.
We still haven't gotten our tattoo.
I tried looking for photos. Yeah, we still have to get the tattoo. I'm still holding you to that.
I thought that one photo you found was from Julie Kulitsa's house, and that you posted on Facebook was a photo from that.
No, that was actually from Quill Coffee.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. That's what the tag was. Because I was digging through photos. You know me, I'm the archivist. So I was like, there's got to be photos of Adam and I from this road trip, right? Because I feel like all we did the whole time was take pictures.
Yeah. We took
pictures of 2 totally different things. We took the first selfie right before we got in the van at your house in the morning, flipping the bird, each of us, because we were like, all right, we're ready to take this road trip. We're going, world. And then there was that one random picture that I shared today on Facebook. And then, the only other pictures I could find of us, even though we're really good friends, is, at your cross camp clinic. And that's it.
Huh.
Isn't that the weirdest?
Yeah.
That has to be the weirdest thing.
Yeah, right. No, you're right.
So I was digging. I'm like, I actually can't think of a picture of, Adam and I.
Because we were on the road for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks? Mm-hmm.
I think it was just about 2 weeks. Yeah.
We were both having relationship problems, and we both wanted to get out of town and do some bike racing. And we wanted to do it in I feel like a safe environment. You know what I mean? And so we were each other's support network for that trip. It was good timing for both of us. And we super broed down. We stayed with Julie in Richmond. We went to the USGP. I think I got my ass kicked in that race, but we had a good trip.
You did get your ass kicked in that race.
I always get my ass kicked at that race.
It was dusty and hard. Everyone had a really hard time at that race.
I'm terrible.
Because it was that year that it was really dry.
I've never had a good ride.
It was just
never. And I can't remember. I remember you raced also, though.
Yeah, I did. I raced the USGP. I raced because there was a Cat 2 race, and I was like, oh, yeah, awesome. For the first time, I don't have to race in a pro race because I was Cat 2 at the time. And that was the first time I had been somewhere where there was a Cat 2-3 race. I think I got 10th or something, and I was super stoked.
You hadn't gotten sick yet, or you weren't aware that you were sick yet at this point, right?
No, that's why we went on the trip.
Because you had just
I got diagnosed.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and I had surgery in 2 weeks, and you were like, so I'm going to go in the van, and I was doing freelance work at the time, and I could do it from anywhere, so I was like, I'm getting in the van, we are going, because who knows what the other side of this is going to be like.
I couldn't remember if it happened just before or just after, but that makes perfect sense that it was just...
Yeah, it was right before we got in the van, maybe a day and a half after I found out, and then we came back maybe where you went and did the Connecticut race. I stayed with Becca in New York for an extra night for her going away to Colorado party.
Which was amazing.
And that is when Stephen Hyde beat you, and you were like, who the hell is this Florida kid?
You're right. That was on that trip. We stopped. Hello, Stephen.
You were like, that kid on the Subaru team? Who is he?
You're
Man,
totally
I'm so mad.
I think he had giant feelings. But you're totally right. It was that trip. Because this is my excuse for why Hyde... Because that story's legendary.
I'm the archivist. I remember everything.
It's great because Hyde tells this story about his coming out day in New England Cyclocross where Al brings him to the race. And then I'm like, who is this guy? And then he attacks everyone. And I'm like, oh, I just follow this guy and we drop everybody else. And I'm like, well, he's making me go kind of hard. And I figure I'll just stay with him on the climb, and then I'll just roll him back in the descent, and I'll beat him in the sprint. And he destroyed me on the descent. He put time on me going downhill. And I was like, I had never seen this guy before in my life, and he just beat me on a downhill in a cyclocross race. The thing that Hyde leaves out of the story whenever he tells it is that it was Becca's going away party when she was moving out of Brooklyn.
And we were out super late.
I might have slept for an hour. I don't get drunk very often. I definitely was drunk then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't either. We fully celebrated Becca. That's why I stayed there, because I was like, I'm not racing.
Becca has a really, in her old neighborhood, has a very horrible strip club, like a block from her old house. We were definitely there. Mm-hmm. It was not, yeah. So I'm that's the only reason Hyde beat me.
Okay. I can verify that there was partying, and I chose not to even go to Connecticut because I was like, no, that's just going to be a bad time. You do it.
I left you in New York, and I don't even know where I left you, which is completely unlike you. Like, you stayed somewhere, and I was like, she's an adult. This is the end of the road trip. I'm sure she'll be fine. She's fine. She'll be fine.
And a couple other people stayed over, and we had like the best time. So it was great. We had, we went out the next night too. And it was like one of those hangovers where like you can't even smell alcohol without being like, oh no. And we didn't go out until 1 a.m. the next day because that was as soon as we felt like okay enough. And that was my first pickleback too. Oh my God, it was so bad. I got very, very inebriated that night.
What's a pickleback?
You do a pickle juice shot, and then like a whiskey shot. Yeah.
So I think what's funny about this is like you and I don't party.
No, not at all.
And we're telling this story like, yeah, remember that time we partied? Like, that's probably like the last time both of us were drunk.
Probably. Like every once in a while, Becca and I will like send each other a message because we played like Scrabble or something too. Like, oh God, it was really funny. And Britley was there also. Yeah. So it was in general just it was a good time. But that was like 3.5 years ago, and that was probably the last time I played super hard. And I was like, this is my last hurrah before I have cancer surgery, so I'm going for it.
Yeah. Well, so. And we said we were going to get tattoos commemorating the trip, which we still haven't done. Maybe we'll finally get that done. We should, now that we're talking about it again, we should really get it done. So many good hashtags. That was a hashtag trip. Get in the van, Vananigans. I think Vananigans happened on that trip. Yeah, it was good. And I guess it would be good to segue from that into cancer and you getting sick, but I feel like if we do that, we're going to have to then backtrack to like school and growing up. We
can do school, and we can go into the, cancer stuff after. I'm okay with that.
Do that. Let's before we get into cancer, let's back up. Before we get cancer. So you didn't grow up. Did you grow up in Worcester proper, or just in a town outside of Worcester?
So I grew up in Fitchburg, home of the Longshore Classic.
Yeah, I apologize. I knew that, and I meant Fitchburg. I mean, Worcester, cool. Fitchburg.
I went to school in Worcester, so like, don't feel 100% bad. There's a reason you thought that.
Okay. Yeah. So yes. So yeah, I'm from Central Mass, and I went to Fitchburg, and then. In high school, I skipped 8th grade, and I started freshman year a little young in high school. And I ended up hearing about this program from one of my teachers that was at Worcester Polytech, which is one of the engineering schools out in Central Mass, where they accept math and science students. And basically the deal is you do 1 year at this like accelerated math and science program, and then your second year you just go to WPI as a regular student for free. And technically it wasn't a charter school, it was a public school, but you had to apply to get in. And I'm trying to think exactly how to explain that. So I effectively ended up skipping 2 grades by doing that. Yeah. So when you started college, like what was the equivalent of your freshman year of college?
I was 16.
16? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were commuting from home. It wasn't like you were living on campus, or were you?
No, so I was still living in Fitchburg, but I would drive like the half hour or so to get to campus. And then I was taking like a full course load of classes. The second year of the program. First year of the program was crazy. It made the second year where I was going to college full time look very easy. Like I would stay up until 1 or 2 in the morning doing work, and we were doing all kinds of stuff. I studied Latin for 6 or 7 years before I went to the school, but they only had French and Spanish, and it was like intermediate advanced, no textbooks. And they were like, all right, you go into the Spanish class. And like, it was just 100% immersion. And I had to figure out how to speak Spanish in like the first quarter because that's what I was doing. But we didn't have textbooks, and it was like lots of non-traditional learning and like also a ton of work. We had to do an original research project. We had all these like crazy complicated math problems and like physics things we had to do all the time. So it was a very, very difficult program. And like, I probably spent, I'm very like, especially back then, very type A perfectionist. So we had to be at school at like 7:15, I think. So I'd be up until 1 in the morning doing homework like every night, and then driving myself to school, and then, using my brain to like the max capacity. And my class was maybe, I think it was 43 graduating students from that program. And the classes were usually about that big because it was just a 2-year high school, basically. There's junior year and senior year.
Yeah. And so with that program, you didn't stay there for all 4 years. You do the 2-year program and then moved on to another 2 years somewhere else?
Yeah. So I effectively did my freshman year of college when I was 16. And I started off studying, like the course track that I was sort of following was biomedical engineering. And I was really into biology, and I was super into that. And when it came time to apply to schools, I applied to a bunch of places. And at the time, I wanted to be a veterinarian, which is maybe not that surprising because I am also a vegan and I love the animals. Clearly, it did not work out that way. Long story short, I eventually ended up at Northeastern, and I graduated with a degree in journalism, which is not related to math or science, and also a totally flourishing industry.
So by the time you graduated and had like an undergrad degree, you were 20? You finished when you were 20?
So I finished my classes in like December 2008, and my birthday's in December, so I was like just turning 20.
Yeah, right.
And then I walked in the summer, didn't do graduations then, but I was working full time already at my grown up job because Northeastern has that co-op program where you're like intern for 6 months somewhere and then back at school, and then you're an intern. And I ended up finding the job that I would work at for the next 3 years during one of those rotations. So I was actually working full time during my last 2 semesters at the place that they ended up creating a job for me, and that's what I did. And that was like 2008, right when the economy was tanking. So it ended up being like a miracle for me.
That you guys ended up with a job. Yeah, right. Well, okay, so let's back up a little bit, because one of the things that I think is always interesting about this is, you're 16 and you think about like what most 16-year-olds are doing in high school, what they're experiencing. They're not just learning academically, they're also learning emotionally and socially by, I think, being put into difficult, like romantic situations or like team sport situations, like whatever. You're learning how to be an adult, and it's not easy for anyone, really. I suppose some people navigate that better than others, but no one's really good at being 16, right? And you, I don't think it's possible to remove all of that, but what was it like? I guess let me back up and ask, how much self-awareness did you have at that time about the things that you might not be doing because you were so deeply immersed in your academic education? How much emotional and social education do you think people in that program might have not gotten? Or did you get something different sort of socially and emotionally in that window?
So I think I understand what you're asking here. And keep in mind, I was also racing track. Like I was on the varsity track team. And well, it was tough because all of my classmates were not necessarily in the same town, right? And I had moved from Fitchburg High over to this other school. I still got to see my track friends. I was still dating the guy that I like dated for 3 years in high school, or 2 years, or whatever it was. And then the people that I was with, they're like, it's like this experience, right? Like I told you, it was a crazy amount of work, but it was also a lot of group work. And you're working with someone who's like really intellectually challenging you, right? Like there's no one in this group that's like slacking off and like not doing. They're too busy trying to be smarter than you. Like it's pretty much like what's that?
Was it competitive?
Yeah, it was very competitive.
Yeah.
Like everyone wanted to be the best at, like, I mean, everyone kind of had their own thing. Like some people were just like really gifted in like linguistics and humanities area, but they were also just generally very smart, generally driven. Like, I don't know what percentage of that my class went to an Ivy League or something very close to it, but I would say more than 50%. So, but socially, I mean, so I was a misfit toy on a misfit toy island a little bit. Like I got bullied really, really badly in high school when I was at Fitchburg, like really badly. So I don't really think I was missing anything socially there because it was just miserable. Like I wasn't with people that were interested in the things that I was interested in and were more interested in being mean to me than anything else. And part of it was they were just being mean to me because I had just come into this group. But the people that I was with when I moved on to this other school knew what it was like, right? Like I'm a little bit of a weird one, right? I have more social skills now for sure than when I was 16, but I was just like so introverted. Like I remember in chemistry class that I had to get up and like talk about some equation or something like that. And I was so nervous. I just like threw up in front of the whole class. Like that's what high school was like for me. Like
that doesn't move you forward socially, generally speaking.
No,
doesn't help. Puking in front of the class.
But there I grew. So I ended up trying to push myself in particular in that area. So I actually joined like the Massachusetts like State Student Advisory Council for the Board of Education while I was there. And that meant I had to speak in front of 300 people to get elected. Any of those people that I went to school with, I could call them up and like we could chit chat, and some of them I'm still very close with, like 2 or 3 of them are still some of my very, very best friends. And I would just like drive to wherever they were and help them with whatever. So it's sort of a little bit like traumatic bonding. So I definitely got that.
Right.
We were just in this really demanding program. And we were like, teenagers. So
yeah. But you were having a shared experience, and that was positive, as opposed to like, it's like you guys were all ostracized together, and then that means ultimately you're part of a group.
Yeah.
You find your group.
Well, so that's what I mean. We were like that Christmas movie with all the sad misfit toys. We were like, oh, hey, like you totally get it. Like there was this like level of understanding. And actually really great to get away from that when I changed schools, because I was like with people that wanted to do that and didn't think I was weird because I just wanted to like go hide in my room and read books. Like
Right. Well, okay, so that gets you to Northeastern, and which gets you to Boston, which gets you a job in Boston, and then at some point in there, you become a cyclist. So we've established that you've always been athletic. That you run in track, and that was not new for you. And not only do you become a cyclist, but you actually end up with a bike industry job. And I'm thinking about Geek House. Did you have a bike industry job before Geek House?
I ran the bike shop at Harvard before Geek House.
So when does cycling start factoring in here? How does cycling happen?
I'll tell this story. I think I got this one. So, so I actually never stopped riding bikes as a kid. Leominster State Forest was pretty much my backyard. And like, now that I'm older, hi mom, I can see that you joined. and probably Dad. No, Dad's definitely sleeping. It's 9:30. So, like, now that I go back there as an adult, I'm like, man, I can't believe I rode this crap when I was like 10 or 11, like by myself, because it's pretty rocky and reedy and technical. But yeah, my parents got me a mongoose bike, and I would go out there. And I remember at one point they got me a little odometer or cycling computer, whatever you want to call it. And I remember the first day on a mountain bike that I like rode 30 miles, and I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever done. So sick. Oh, my mom just said that Dad is not sleeping. And so I was like always into riding my bike, but like, it's crazy to me because I grew up in the home of the Longshore, right? But it literally never occurred to me to bike race. I just like riding my bike, and I liked building little dirt jumps in the woods with the neighborhood boys. And like, I was the first one to go down the hill by my parents' house with no hands. So I was always into bikes, but at some point, you know, I became a cyclist, I would say. So that ended up happening while I was in school. Two of my friends from my nerd high school, one went to, what is the business school that's in Waltham? Why am I blanking on this? Begins with a B.
Wentworth?
No.
Brandeis?
No.
Bentley.
Okay, so one went to Bentley, the other one went to BC, and I went to Northeastern. So we got an apartment together, and it was at Cleveland. Now, for those of you who are not up on your Boston geography, trying to get from where Cleveland Circle is over to where Northeastern is via public transit is basically a complete waste of your time. It either involves a 66 going all the way down to Park Street on the Green Line and then going all the way back up on the E Line. You might as well just like bang yourself over the head with a frying pan a bunch of times, call it a day. So when I worked for the Department of Conservation, that was my summer job, we ended up finding this bike on the side of the road. And it was blue, and it was there for a couple of days, and then eventually like we reclaimed it, and I ended up turning that into my commuter. So I just started riding my bike. It was like 4 or 5 miles. Actually, I also started a biking blog then too, where I was just like writing what I wore and who I saw, because I always like paying attention to the same, you know, bike people that are on the same schedule. Like I still remember that there was a guy who was, you know, wearing a blue outfit and kind of looked like a lumberjack, and was always crossing the Massac Bridge at the same time I was. So yeah, I started doing that, and when I had built up the bike, I built it up as a single speed, and then riding from somewhere, the freewheel like busted, and I happened to have a cog on the fix side because it was a flip flop hub, and then that's the first time I rode a sick fixie. I never looked back.
By accident.
Yeah, it like wasn't even on purpose or for being cool. I was coming from a dodgeball game, and the freewheel body just died. So that's how cool I was. So seriously,
let's pause for a second here. Wait, you rode your fixie home from dodgeball. I cannot believe we're actually friends.
Yeah. Well,
like, what other ironic things were happening?
But this before it was ironic. I know that's really ironic for me to say, but it was honestly because I was like, I have no friends, so I have to do something. And this is before I made bike friends. It was a work league. That's what it was. That's how I got into dodgeball. Because at my job, a bunch of people were on the team. So I was like, all right. And then we drank at Samba's after and played flip cup. So I was like, all right, good enough.
In knee socks?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, duh. So I started.
You've come so far.
I've come so far. And then that's when Boston bold sprints started happening around that time. I met Jordan Winkler around that time, a couple other people. And eventually I just started going to like some bike stuff. I also met Tasha around the time. And yeah, somehow I just like got sucked into it all, and I don't even know what happened. It became like this thing where all of a sudden the only people that I knew rode bikes. The only thing I wanted to do was ride bikes or talk about bikes. And if I rode around in Boston and like I didn't see one person that I knew, like it was weird. It just went from like 0 to 1,000, where it was like, oh yeah, I've always ridden bikes and that's been fun. And then eventually, my friend Britt had a roommate, Joshua, who was on the Geek House team, and he was like, you should race cyclocross. And that's how I ended up joining Geek House.
And that's how you actually went from like being a rider, a serious rider, to a bike racer. That's where you entered your first race, not counting boulder sprints. Like, did you do any
I did track racing with Lauren Kling a few times. Like, I went to the Londonderry track, if you can call it that, a couple times, because that's where Cambridge Bicycles was like pretty into that then. And I also started doing the 5-4-5 like crack of dawn rides with her around that time. Mm-hmm. So Lauren Clay and I are like super bike buddies. And yeah, then that's basically Joshua was like, hey Marty, like this girl's been doing like these alley cat races, Sig Fixies forever. But you know, she'd be a rad addition to the team. And like, that's how I ended up joining Geek House and like racing cross. And, I think you've seen this photo before where my first race ever was Gloucester. Like I either just do nothing or I do something like way 1,000%. So I think I had built my bike up the night before. And at this point I was running the bike shop. I remember because we had like our team bike build at the shop. And like, I didn't know what I was doing. Like I just basically got thrown on this team. There was a bike. I built up a bike. I was like, I don't know. It's basically like steeplechase on a bike, like whatever. I remember pre-riding the course, and because I had to ride to get a ride, I hadn't like lowered the pressure in my tires yet, and I completely spaced because I was like running around like a nervous idiot. And Julie Lockhart, I slid out right in front of her, like in one of the little gravel sections, and she was like, "You need to figure out what you're doing and not crash in front of me." And I was like, "Oh my god, this lady who's like wearing a national champion kit is like yelling at me," and like, "Oh my god, I don't know."
Old enough to be your mother. It was like your mom was yelling at you.
Yeah. And then Gloucester was my first race. So that is how I became addicted to cyclocross.
What year was that? Do you remember what year it was?
I want to say it was 2009, 2010. I think it was 2009. Yeah.
And so when you say you were running the team, you were running the Geek House team at this point? Like you had hooked up with them enough?
No, man. I was running the bike shop at Harvard at this point. Like, got it. Okay. That we just had because I had the shop space, that we just had the bike build party like the night before.
Got it. So, but then at some point you did end up riding for and working at Geek House. And I guess the shop is your first industry job, but I think of industry job, beyond the bike shop,
Right, of course.
Working for a manufacturer.
But but running a shop is actually pretty important cred for an industry job.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. You're talking to brands, you're talking to reps, you're managing people, and you're like 20 when you're doing this at this point, right? Like 2021?
Maybe like 22. Mm-hmm. So it must have been 2010. That was my first bike race.
Well, and so the job that you had when I met you, it was some kind of, I don't even remember what you were doing. You sat in front of a computer.
I did internet for a living.
Yeah. What was that job? What were you doing at that job?
So at that time, my first job was I worked for an educational travel company, and I was like the web person. So I did a little front end web development. This was 2008. So like, remember that the internet wasn't like it is now, that people were figuring out how YouTube worked and all that stuff. And then I also did a bunch of like A/B testing for, responses to pages and marketing analysis and a lot of number crunching. A lot of spreadsheets, a lot of daily sales and marketing reports, and lots of analysis and hanging out in Excel. Then I ran that shop for a while. And then I went back and I worked for a competitor of that company. And that's where I was when I met you. So doing a very similar thing. But
yeah. But for someone else. And for me, like the direction I want to take this in is, at no point were you thinking like the bike industry was where your career was going to go? Like You had this, training in biomedical engineering. You end up with a journalism degree. You graduate from college 3 years early. And now you're the global product manager at GT Bicycles. And I know I just skipped a lot of things in the middle. But how did you take that diverse background? And, I would, if we had asked you at any moment, what your ambition was career-wise, what would you have said before you ended up in this role that you're in now?
I don't know. Sometimes, honestly, like, I know this might be skipping ahead here, but like sometimes like memories are like really hard for me to remember. So like that's kind of a stupid way to.
Yeah. No. I get it.
Like I've had, like post surgery, I've had like some serious memory issues. But I think what I wanted then was like I just wanted to like climb the ladder and like just keep, doing what I was doing, but being more strategic. Like I was super into the strategy and the analysis and that type of thing, and I wanted to be at the top of that for wherever it was. Like, I still think that stuff is super interesting. But yeah, at that time I was just like, the crazy person that would like ride into work and people would be like, oh my God, it's like raining or it's sunny outside. I can't believe you rode into work today. So that's just what I did. Right. And then I raced on the weekends and that was sort of, my thing. But at no point then was I like, oh yeah, that's totally what I'm going to do. I'm going to like work in the bike industry. At that time, no, that was not on my radar.
Yeah. Well, and the part of it that makes sense to me is you're still doing analytical work in whatever job that you had here. To do the job that you're doing right now, I imagine you have to do a lot of analysis. You have to evaluate circumstances and make decisions about how to move forward. And you could say that that's sort of every job, but I can see you being successful in your job because that's the way that you approach it. It's all systems analysis in a sense. Sometimes the system that you're analyzing is made up of people or bikes or, I don't know, whatever the widget happens to be. But it seems like it's not actually as far off as it might seem, where you landed.
Oh yeah, no, that's totally fair, I would say.
Let's back up then, and because you mentioned like sometimes memory. It really can't explain that unless we talk about cancer happens in this period between being an athlete and racing bikes and starting to have jobs in the bike industry, and then all of a sudden, just as you're reaching a pretty high level, like you made it all the way. You were racing elites. You were finishing on the lead lap of elite races. If I remember correctly, you even finished on the lead lap of elite races, like post cancer. That happened? Am I remembering that correctly? Did you get out and like? Did you do it as a point, as like a?
No, I don't think so. I think I didn't. I was finishing on the lead lap before I got diagnosed. Then I didn't really race elite after that. Like I jumped in a couple races, but it was like not the same.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And I do remember that. But I think it's still an achievement and it's notable if you can get to the level where you're able to finish on the lead lap of the UCI elite cycle. Cross race, but it speaks to your accomplishment in the sport, how seriously you eventually took it, how hard you were willing to train, maximizing your talent and skill. So it's a notable achievement. And so just as that's starting to happen and you're starting to sort of see what you're capable of as an athlete, you find out you have cancer.
Right. Yeah, that was so serious. I mean, I guess it was serious, but
cancer.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Well, say whatever you're going to say, and then I'm going to start the storytelling, if you will.
Yeah, well, I think that want to talk about it, obviously, because it's your life and it's very important. But I think the thing about cancer that has really struck me as I've experienced it more, and then in contrast with the fact that I've also had a child and dealing with being a parent, they're related to me as, in a sense, like opposite sides of the same coin. And what I mean by that is cancer is not unusual, abnormal, uncommon. It touches all of us. And yet, for every person that it happens to, whether it's you, the person, or if it happens to someone like close to you, it is the most horrible. It's as horrible as every stupid story you hear about it. Like, they're all true. And it can be overwhelming because it's so common. And it's hard to think that something so common can actually be as horrible as it is. And I think of having a child as the opposite of that. Everybody can, for the most part, most people can have kids. It's not uncommon to have a kid. And everybody who has a kid, it's like a miracle. It's the most amazing thing that ever happens to you. And I refer to it as a common miracle. Mm-hmm. And I think cancer is the common tragedy for so many people. And, you know, you were one of the closest people to me that it had happened to, and that I had to, you know, process it. Closest person, really, for me. And so it was, it affected, your cancer obviously affected a lot of people. Obviously it affected you the most. So you were sick for a while and you couldn't figure it out. You didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. So that year, like, I think I won, you know, the most important race of New England Cyclocross, Ice Weasels. And I was like, okay, you know, gonna go out on top, upgrade to a 2, and race on the road for the first time. Cause like, I didn't really do that. I would just train for cross and call it like that. But I was like, oh no, I'm like, I have to hang out with like the fast pro people because that's New England bike racing. Like for women at the time was you were either in the 3-4 race or you were like in the UCI race. So I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this for real again, 1000%. So Al was my coach at the time. And I just remember like getting up earlier in the morning, staring at my kitchen sink, riding the rollers, doing lots of bike rides. This is also when I joined the Ride Studio Cafe women's road team, which was super awesome. Because there's really nothing like road bike racing without teammates, which is maybe not that or not a thing that you would really think about as a guy, but for women, it's a little harder to come by, I think. And, you know, I took it pretty seriously, but I was just having like a really hard time. I was tired all the time and I just like had these weird symptoms and I was like, maybe I'm overtrained or like, maybe I need to like eat more of this or my bike needs to be fit. It was like all stuff that could be sort of explained, right? It was like, I'm just tired from training too much. This is getting numb because I need to get refit on my bike. Blah, blah. Like there's all little stuff that like in the rear view, you're like, oh yeah, something was kind of messed up. And when I raced the Concord Crit in 2012, I dropped out and like, I don't really drop out of races. And I dropped out because like I couldn't feel my legs. My tongue felt like it was like 6 sizes too big for my mouth. And I was getting this tingly feeling in my hand. Like I couldn't pedal. I just like somehow put my body off of the bike and like sat on the ground. And I called my dad. My dad is a registered nurse. And I was like, hey dad, I have these weird symptoms. Like what's going on? And my dad was like super calm. And it's like, okay, yeah, you need to have someone drive you to the ED or ER and get checked out. But he was super calm about it. Like, oh yeah, it's probably tension nerve or something, whatever.
Yeah. Like he didn't want to make you panic, or do you think he actually?
So after like much later, yeah. He was like, yeah, so I heard you on the phone and like, I knew something was wrong because like your speech was all messed up. And like I said, like it felt like my tongue was like way too big for my mouth. And so that race is like in August or maybe it was like the end of July that year. And so I went and they ran like a million tests and they were like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. And then they're like, oh, I know. You probably have MS. So they told me that. They're like, we think you have MS. And then maybe 4-5 minutes later, usually the MRI machines are pretty busy, so you don't usually get to go in that quick. Put me into an MRI machine. So you can't move for 45 minutes. So they were like, you probably have MS. Please enjoy this time alone in like a beeping chamber where you can't move alone with your thoughts. Have a nice day. So I'm like sitting in there for 45 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. They came back negative, which was a relief. But something was definitely wrong. So I went and saw my PCP. And when you go get like a annual physical exam, like they palpate your neck. She didn't find anything. But she was like, oh, it sounds like maybe there's a pinched nerve or something. So I did 2 more MRIs. And if it weren't for both my mom and my dad are registered nurses, if they weren't like advocating for me and telling me what to do, no one would have ever caught this unless it like had metastasized, if it had gotten that far. So they ended up doing...
Like how would they catch it eventually if they didn't catch it this way? Like... I mean, eventually...
No, if it metastasized or like moved into your like lymphatic system, then that's when it would be a little bit easier to pick up. So they did a scan of my cervical spine, aka my neck, and I got a call and they were like, so you don't have any compressed nerves, but there is a tumor that's like 4.5 centimeters in your neck, so like size of a golf ball. I was like, wasn't expecting that. And as soon as I like looked in the mirror after that, I was like, I can't unsee it. And then I was pissed because I was like, how did someone miss this? You know, like I went to a doctor, I did the thing, I did all this. Yeah. Well, it was one of those things because it was like so close to like the center where like if it's you every day, you don't notice it, right? Like, you know, you might have a bump on your nose or like my chin is crooked or something. You just like, you're like, oh, it's just the way it is, right? Yeah. But once you see it, it's like those optical illusions that you can't unsee it, even if you couldn't see it before. So that happened. And I was like, okay, I'm totally not going to panic. Like, I'm 24. I'm just going to think positive because it's not going to do me any good to stress out about that. So they have to do what's called an FNA, which is basically where they put a giant needle in your neck while you just kind of chill there and you just see the doctor like put it in your neck, swirl it around because they're trying to collect samples of the cells in the mass. And the doctor that I had was like, you probably don't have cancer. It's fine. Like, there's no way. Then I get a call and I do have cancer. Or they were like, it's like 90% probable that you have, follicular carcinoma. And I was like, okay. And that's where the van came in, or the van story. And like, I kind of didn't, the van trip. And it all ended up kind of falling into place a little bit because what had happened the 2 months before is I went skydiving and then I quit my office job the next day. And that's why I was freelancing because I was like, you know what? Life's too short. No way. And I was still 24 at the time. So when I quit, I switched to my parents' insurance and they work for Brigham and Women's Hospital. So that's where I ended up getting treated. Not a bad place to be stuck with treatment.
Yeah.
And
had a baby there.
And so like I was on their insurance, I was freelancing, and I had taken that time off because I wanted to race the USGP circuit. Like that was my plan. But I was like, I have enough money saved up. Like I'll go race all the races and like play fake pro for a while because why not?
Yeah.
And then, right in the middle of the season, November 5th, I got that call, and then we got in the van a couple days later.
And we had to go.
Yeah, we had to go. And then they scheduled my surgery for like 2 weeks after that phone call. So that van trip and surgery ended up aligning perfectly. Like it was a good way to say goodbye to that phase of my life, I think.
Right. And that you've basically been on a sort of an up and down journey. So that's been how many years now? How long ago did you get your diagnosis?
So it'll be 4 years in November this year.
Yeah. And I feel like for 3 of those years, they've been struggling. The doctors, I suppose, I'm blaming it on doctors right now, have been struggling to help you get your cancer-free lifestyle under control.
My preferred mode of living is cancer-free lifestyle. I'm going to use that hashtag now.
Yeah, I was comparing it to like the sick wet lifestyle, the cancer-free lifestyle. But you have, I'm blanking on. You refer to your dirtbag body lifestyle. That's what I was going for. You're often complaining about the things that your body does and does not do, like difficulty like controlling your temperature or your metabolism, being tired at weird times, having energy at other times, like sleeping a lot at certain times and then not being able to sleep at other times. And you've been struggling with that, as I've observed, for a good 3 years, but you seem to have turned the corner recently.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been an athlete my whole life. So part of me being able to find out that I even had it was me being in tune, being like, no, something is like wrong inside of me. Like that feeling was what helped me get diagnosed. And then after that, you know, some people are like, oh, it's going to be awesome. Like you're just going to like have the perfect thyroid levels and you're just going to bounce right back and it's going to be amazing.
I know someone for whom that it went. They had their thyroid removed and they had tumors in their neck, and his name's John Durso. There may be some listeners who are familiar with him. And I'm not to suggest that it was easy for John, but he was on the U.S. national team, raced a really high level, and returned to a very high level. And I just saw him at Quabbin. I hadn't seen him in a while. Super, super fit, looked great, tan, healthy as always. I'm like, how are you doing? It's like, I just had 14 tumors taken out of my neck 2 weeks ago. And I was like,
I mean, that sounds funny, but
but his cancer came back after like, I think it was 15 years between tumors. And I was always impressed with the comeback that he made, but obviously he's taken thyroid medication and he got it dialed, but then it came back and he still, I'm pretty sure he finished, maybe he didn't finish in front of me, but that's the important part I was going to, point that I was going to make there is he's still very fit and looks great. And I saw that that's not how it was going for you.
So that was tough. Like the first doctor that treated me was like a researcher doctor, right? Like once I was no longer interesting, like he didn't really, I was like his clinic hours. You know, if you watched House at all, that's kind of what it was like. But so that went on for a while before I figured out that guy like didn't care. Like at one point I had to go to ER, and when they took my levels, it was like 100 times higher than it was supposed to be. Now, when you're a cancer patient for thyroid, they're supposed to keep you under suppression. I'm not going to get into like super boring chemistry stuff, but after you have cancer, the concept is you are supposed to be under suppression for 5 years. So they keep your levels below a certain threshold because they don't want to encourage growth of cancerous thyroid cells recurring. So having a cancer patient within 1 year at levels 100 times higher than they're supposed to be, pretty bad. That was when I was like, I stopped riding my bike because I couldn't do it. And I remember like I still had that job downtown and I would take the red line into Davis Square. And then I lived maybe like a 7-minute walk from the train station to my house. I just remember like several times that I just sat on the bench outside and I just cried because I was too tired to walk like 5 minutes to my house. Or like, then I would walk and then I would think about, do I want to go to bed or do I want to make dinner and then like not clean up and have my roommates be mad at me? So I would go to bed and like not eat, or I would make myself dinner and then I would lie on the floor in the kitchen and just cry because I was too tired. Like the level of exhaustion was so real, and like I just felt trapped because like, 6 months or a year before that, I was finishing on the lead lap of like a really muddy Gloucester race, and I just couldn't believe it that it was like this bad. So then
so what happened? Yeah, what happened? Why are things going so well now?
So I stopped working with the original doctor, found a second one. It got a little better. But I also just like had other things going on, like digestive issues, iron issues, vitamin D issues. Hypothyroid patients have like low stomach acid, so they're often very bad at absorbing certain nutrients or producing them. So that was a big problem. And then also some people, there are two types of thyroid. Well, there's more, but there's two main ones. There's T4, which most people are on, like levothyroxine. And that's the storage hormone. And then the active one is T3, and that's the one your body actually uses. So most thyroid patients are put on T4, and your body has to turn T4 to T3. But some go on T4 and T3. That way you have active hormone every day. And it has a half-life, I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on this, but it has like a half-life of 4 to 6 hours once it's in your system, or 4 to 8 hours, something like that. Mm-hmm. So you have to like take multiple dosages of it a day. Otherwise you get like a huge T3 crash. Like if I forget to take my afternoon dose, I'm like, oh my God, why do I feel like crap? And then I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't take my second dose. So T3 is a little bit controversial as far as endocrinologists prescribing that. And honestly, like once we straightened out like the iron and the vitamin D, and then put me on a T3 medication, I was fine. Like I'm so pissed off about it that I was like, literally, that's all that had to happen. But like,
yeah, like it was an easy fix once they figured it out. Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, when I saw you, I hadn't seen you really. Like maybe I'd only seen you once or twice since you moved to Connecticut. But I don't remember when the last time we saw each other actually in person was. But you looked so different. You look so healthy and fit. And it was just, after seeing you struggle for so long, it was great. It was great to see. And I assume once you turn the corner on the physical challenges that you're having, it makes a lot of the rest of your life more manageable, because it's a stress removed. And so you can handle the stress in other places. And so I feel like getting that under control must make your job easier and your relationships easier and going to the fucking grocery store easier. You know? Like,
yeah, totally. Because it's like,
does it spill over into everything else?
Well, it's just like, you don't think about, like, I talk a little bit about this on my social media, but like the privilege of like being able to do mostly whatever you want with your body whenever you want is a pretty amazing one. And I absolutely took that for granted when I was like 24, right? Like you expect that when you're
all healthy people.
When you're like 80, that's going to be a problem. But, it takes up so much of your mental space. There's like a thing in the chronically ill people community called the spoon theory, where basically if I were to explain it to someone, I'd be like, basically I have these 12 spoons in my hand, right? And everything that I do uses up a spoon. So I have to figure out every day how many spoons I have and how to use them. So it was like that thing, right? Where do I make dinner or do I go to bed? Because those are my options. And like healthy people don't even think about spoons. They're like, whatever. Like, why would I even think about that? I got as many spoons as I want. But like when you're not healthy, it's like all you think about, because you're like, oh crap, this person wants me to like go meet them after work, but like I need to go to bed at like 7 p.m. or something you didn't expect makes you even more tired. So not having to think about that, like I honestly don't think about that anymore, which is like, oh, right, wow, it's crazy. Yeah. Like I get up at 4 a.m, ride my bike to the gym, go lift for like an hour and a half, go to work at my desk by like 7 or 7:30, go for a run on my lunch break, ride home. Like that's my day. If you told me that I was
double session,
I mean, my bike ride to work is like not very long, so it's not very impressive. But if you told me like a year ago that I would be doing, you know what I was doing on my lunch break a year ago? I was like sleeping in someone's car or like hiding somewhere or like anything. Like I was just like so tired and I couldn't like get it together. So yeah, it's a huge relief because I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, it's incredible. The 12 spoons sounds sadly like having a newborn baby. So keep that in mind. If you decide you want to breed at some point, if that's still an option for you, I'm not sure if it is, but it's very like for instance, I've started putting the baby just on the floor of the bathroom when I have to go to the bathroom. I realized today that I had reached a level of parenting, and I was like, oh, I bet other parents will know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I have to put the baby down, and I'm in the bathroom, and I put him on the bathroom floor. I put my baby down on the bathroom floor so I can go to the bathroom. It's one of my, because I only have 12 spoons. This baby's got to go somewhere if I want to pee. So Todd's commenting he relates. So that's a line you cross, because I think you got to get to a certain point before you're willing to put your baby down on the bathroom floor. You got to get to the point where you're like, I actually don't care anymore. I'm putting this baby down on the floor, the bathroom floor. So 12 spoons. Yeah. I'm going to look into that. That's a good theory.
I'll send you the link. Like, someone actually wrote it, but I can't remember her name.
Let's talk about bike industry. We're just a bit over an hour now, and so I think this will be our last topic. And because I really am curious about what you do at GT, and I really did want to almost like apologize in advance, but I really wanted to talk about being a woman in the bike industry. And I know in a way you could care less and you don't necessarily want to talk about that. And in a way I don't want to talk about that because I'm interested in your job, period. But I also observe that there aren't that many women who are product managers in the bike industry, and that impacts the way the bike industry works. It impacts, I think, your job to a degree. And you experience things differently than the majority of the other product managers in your field. And I think for a lot of men who don't understand why this stuff matters or why things are different, and want everybody to just get over it and stop talking about it, like it's if it's only a problem because we talk about it. It's like I don't know why they don't believe that sexism in the bike industry exists, or in any industry, right? Like if we just stop talking about it, it won't actually exist. And I feel like that's why it exists. It exists because men often don't want to believe that it exists. So, it's like I did this to Erin Paulson when she was on the show too. I was like, I don't want to ask you like, what's it like being a girl in a band? But then I asked her, because I understand both sides of it. Like, I can't wait till we don't have to talk about this. But if we don't talk about it, I feel like it doesn't change. And I'm worried that it won't change. So let's talk about your job at GT, and then let's maybe see what we stumble on, maybe organically, about what's different or what you observe differently doing this job as a woman that might give people listening an extra perspective that they won't get otherwise.
Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about what being a product manager actually is, because I feel like, people hear that term a lot, but it doesn't actually mean anything. I mean, it does, but it's like someone's saying, someone's being like, I'm a computer programmer, right? Like that could mean so many things. Something about bikes with products. So like I mentioned at the beginning, I am the pavement and the women's product manager for GT. So what a product manager does, at least at GT, is we're responsible for the whole product line. So making sure that we have all the right price points for each one, and then working with all the different various teams for that product. So like, let's say I'm working on a new road bike, right? That means I have to present the business case for it to make sure it gets made.
E-bikes.
Or if I'm
your boss.
Todd is my boss. He is my manager. He hates being called my boss. So yes, Todd is my boss.
I figured. Yeah. So for the people listening to the podcast, Cait's boss at GT just keeps leaving the comment e-bikes. This is like a third time he's left the
because
comment
I'm
e-bikes.
also the e-bike product manager. I am pavement, women, and e-bikes. The truth comes out. So,
you got a motor? Can you get me a motor for my bike, bro?
No, it doesn't really work like that. That's why when the whole FemKit thing came up, I was like, you guys don't even know about how expensive that stuff is. Like, it's not even that easy. Trust me.
See, we could talk about that for an hour, but go on.
So like, it's my job to, oversee the whole line, right? Make sure it makes sense, right? Like, there's certain price points and bikes that, you got to have, like a 105 road bike. Like, every brand has that bike. You need that price point. You need that spec level. So I present the business case for, like, let's say a new road bike, right? And then I, present the whole line that we're going to have, a carbon and an alloy we're going to have this many levels, this many frame sizes. And then I work with industrial design and engineering to make sure that that product meets, whatever requirements we're looking for that project. And also with graphic design, because you could have a really sweet bike, but if it looks hideous on the floor, like no one's going to buy it.
As Todd learned when he worked at Iron Horse. Sorry, Todd. And then also, working with our international sales teams, going and visiting shops, all that stuff. Basically just like talking to everyone and trying to make the most informed bike line possible. And it's also my job to, be up on the trends, see what the kids are doing, that kind of thing. So, looking ahead, like my job is really a lot of looking ahead. So I spend a lot of time actually looking, at fashion stuff, because soft goods is ahead of hard goods. It takes a while for things in clothing to come into stuff that's a little bit more high price point, like bikes or cars and things like that. Like you think about like neon, right? We tried to do neon. A GT tried to do neon before it was really coming through, and it tanked. Then it came through in fashion, and now, we all see the high vis that's been coming through for the last few years. Yeah, that's interesting.
So stuff like that. And then fun fact is that before bikes are bikes, they're spreadsheets. So I have all these part numbers like jambling around in my head, being like, oh yeah, BRM 355, that doesn't exist anymore. You need to spec 315 or 365 instead. And just like, you're basically playing like bicycle, Excel, price point Tetris. So I propose these bikes, and now I have to make them work, make sure they cost the right amount and that everyone can make the right margin. And that it gets delivered on time, because that's a consideration. Like, Shimano might come out with something new, but it's not going to deliver until July. So if I have a cross bike that I'm trying to get down, like that doesn't work. I might have to find something else that'll work. That kind of thing. So work a lot with factories. I work a lot with like different vendors, whether it's, a bigger one like Shimano or smaller ones like Clement, things like that.
But also, I think working with athletes is part of your job to some degree. So
I also work with some of the athletes. We do have like, specific sports marketing people, but we have like our women's enduro factory racing team this year, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you specifically about that, because I had the impression, and I didn't know where I'd gotten it from, if it was from social media or just from following you, but that the GT sponsors a lot of women.
Yeah, we do.
And I didn't realize there was a women's team that they were sponsoring. I just was, because I think of mountain bike sponsorship as often being individual athlete driven, more than like road, which is always team driven. But so there's a women's team.
Yeah, so we have two athletes on our factory mountain bike race team, Annika Beerton and Troop, both all the EWS race. We also, it's okay. You don't follow mounts. That's fine. No. You should Google Annika Beerton and Rachel Troop both.
What's EWS?
Oh, Enduro World Series. So there's no like World Cups for Enduro. That's the closest thing. Yeah. And then we also sponsor Felicia Stansel, who is an Olympic hopeful for Rio, for BMX.
Okay.
We sponsor a Czech women's cross country team. We do.
What is GT selling mostly? Like, what does GT consider its main product? Are mountain bikes its main bike? Is there still a road bike? There was a cross bike at one point, I feel like. Because Todd Wells rode that bike, right?
Yeah, that's true. So the vast majority of our business right now is mountain bike. But my job is to skew it a little bit more towards the pavement. That's an area that, we're trying to expand and grow.
Yeah.
And also women's.
Yeah, they stuck you with the women's stuff, huh?
I am the most qualified, being the only lady.
So you guys just painted everything pink and called it
it was great.
Women's stuff?
Yeah, that was it.
Easy. Done. Yeah. Problem solved. Bikes sold.
So, I mean, like, I know the women's thing, like the women's product thing is pretty controversial. And for me, it's like super interesting why it's so controversial on bikes, right? Like, we have it in shoes, we have it in clothing, we have it in all this other stuff, and like no one really cares, right? But bikes, for some reason, it's blowing people's minds. My opinion, like,
you mean having like a women specific line?
Yes.
You're saying like you have men's shoes and women's shoes. Why? And so it's an issue that we have men's bikes
like
and
all
women's
these articles
bikes
about it, and like I understand why, because it is like it's a difficult thing to address. But for me, I think it's important to have product that's thought about for women, because it expresses to women when they step into a shop that like, yeah, you're welcome here. Like, we thought about you. Like, you don't have to buy a women's bike. Like, that's fine. I have men's bikes. It's cool. It's men's bikes. But you know, the fact is that most mountain bike or any bike product has, you know, the average male in mind. Like, suspension is tuned for heavier riders. Women do tend to be lighter. You know, frame sizes don't necessarily go all the way down. Stuff like that. So it's hard because some people feel like women's product is pandering to women, but I really don't feel like that's the case. Like, you don't have to buy women's product if you don't want to, but the fact that it's there, I think is encouraging, right? Yep. Like, I don't like going into bike shops because I'm just like, ugh, I get treated like I don't belong here, or like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, right. Yeah, but I wanted to stop you there. I was gonna like further that point when you said it earlier. So two things there. Like, part of it, if you think there's a bell curve of men and a bell curve of women and there's overlap, then one of the things that maybe we really need is a bigger size range to reach all customers. You know, that there are women because of that bell curve overlap, right? But where they don't overlap is when the marketing ends up being specifically for women, and you're saying women are in this bell curve and we're going to market, these are women's bikes and these are men's bikes. And even though there's actually probably overlap where you doesn't need to be a men's bike or a women's bike, it's maybe in the styling or the marketing that happens. Part two of that, and that's half a question, half a statement.
Like, was there a question?
It's an observation that I'm not married to as like, this is how it is. It's like, this is kind of what I observe, and I'm interested in your feedback on that. But before you do, like, part two of that is the how welcomed women are. I can see how it's partially on the manufacturers and where the manufacturers are making products for women. But such a big part of that is, what's the interface? And the interface is the bike shop. So you started talking about, am I welcome in the bike shop? But part of feeling welcome in the bike shop was that there are products for you. But we know that a lot of women don't feel welcome in the bike shop because of the way that they're spoken to and treated in the bike shop. You know, and I think it's to GT's credit that they said, Cait Dooley is the most qualified person for this job, male or female. We need to get her in here and put her stuff. They didn't hire to be, you're not there because you're a woman per se, or to be in charge of the women's stuff. You're in there because you're fucking smart and you can visualize a bike through a spreadsheet, and not many people can do that. So I did kind of leave a question in your lap.
Yeah. So what was the question exactly? So to be clear, like, when I got hired at GT, like, they didn't hire me to be the women's product manager. That was something that ended up being like added on, like e-bikes, to my job description.
Yeah.
That I was just not just, but payment product manager. Then we decided as a brand team that was an avenue that we wanted to pursue. So I think maybe what you're saying or was asking was about like the experience of like going to a shop, or like what it's like on that end, maybe a little bit.
Well, I guess the observation that I was looking for feedback on was, like, you started talking about women specific stuff, and right. You know, we have women specific stuff in other sports, and it's not, or other categories like shoes, for instance, and it's not a big deal. And then it ends up being, we're still figuring it out in the bike industry. Like, we know that we need to be more welcoming towards women and not shoehorn them into things that don't fit them. The question that I don't know the answer to, and you might, is do we need women's specific products, or do we need more size ranges to accommodate, again, that outer edge of the bell curve that doesn't overlap with what's being currently manufactured?
So it's a little bit of both, I think, right? Like, as much as I hate to say it, I think you need both, right? Like, I'm not the shortest person, right? I'm 5'5" or 1.65 meters, which is not the shortest person that's ever existed, right? And like, in some manufacturers or bikes, like, I remember that I would have a hard time finding a bike. Like, I'm not a short person. Like, I'm not. Mm-hmm. I'm literally average for an American woman. So yeah, having the size range is a huge deal. Like, I can't tell you how many emails I've been on with bike ladies being like, hey, does anyone have a bike for my friend? She's like 5'3" and she's trying to find something that fits her, blah, blah, blah. And then we've got like a list. Like, you go to any group of bike women and ask them like what bikes will fit short women, and like, they know. Right. So yes, size range thing is a huge, huge part of it. And I think the other thing is, right, like, how do you signal to, like, there's a lot of, you know, male presence in cycling. Like, there's no denying that. Like, all around, no matter which way you look, like, there's Tour de France, and then now there's like the one-day event for women. Or like, when you think about cycling, like, most people don't think about a famous female cyclist. Like, there are some sports where that's the case, right? Like tennis or running, for sure, things like that.
But in cycling, men's cycling is the default. And when we talk about cycling, we don't say men's cycling. We say cycling when we mean men's cycling. And if we mean women's cycling, we specifically say women's cycling.
Right. So I don't think like there's any one way to like fix that, right? Like, I think a little bit of everything has to be done. And everything isn't going to work for every woman, just like everything doesn't work for every man. So for me to be like, oh yes, I know what everyone wants, like, that's insane. That's insane. I don't know what everyone wants. I don't even know what I want some days, you know? So.
But you're a woman, and I brought you on the show to speak, to tell me.
I'm not the Lorax. I do not speak for truth. So that's the tough part, right? Is that, like, a lot of times, not even just cycling, like, a guy does stuff, and like, if he does something jerky, he's just a jerk. But if a woman does something, she's ruined everything for women forever. Like, so many times, like, I have been told, like, oh, like, you are a bad whatever for saying X, Y, or Z and like ruining women's cycling. And I'm just like, okay, sure. Like, that's insane.
How did you get that responsibility? Right.
So like, how do you fix that in a sport that is like not super welcoming to women a lot of the times? I know that, you know, there's anecdata where people have a different experience. Like, it's been a different experience for me for sure, but like, I regularly go on shop visits all over the place, all over the world, and it's like a real mixed bag. But then you go to places that are like, you know, sports goods stores or like an REI or something like that. And like, those are merchandise like with trained staff who have like a certain level. And like with every shop, it's kind of like its own thing. So you don't know what you're going to get. It's also kind of like going to like a car repair place, right? Like, a lot of people walk in there intimidated because they don't know what's wrong with their car or how it works, or they expect that, you know, they're going to get a fast one pulled on them. And I think shops are a lot like that for people. Like, I remember in Boston, I went into a shop and I was looking for a specific part. I think it was a seat post clamp, right? And I was like, oh, I need this size seat post clamp. And they were like, are you sure that you need this one? Like, do you have the bike? Because I don't think you know which one it is. And I was just like, okay. And I walked right out of that shop. I was before I worked in the bike industry, but
every woman I know has that story, though. Like, right? That's the bike shop story. Like, some bro doesn't trust that you know what you're talking about because you're a woman, and is dismissive of you. And then I think a lot of women don't. The fact that you just turned on your heel and walked out, like, I think a lot of people wish they could respond that sort of directly to it. Just like, oh no, bye. That's the right answer, right? Like, that's the right response. I'll go elsewhere.
Yeah. So circling back, yeah, I don't think that there's like one solution, right? Like one example I like looking at a lot is running. Like women weren't allowed to run in a marathon not that long ago.
Right. Yeah.
And now more than 50% of like running events are women. I think cycling can get there. We just got to like figure it out. So I think having women's products is important. I don't think women need to buy it per se, but I think it's like an important shift, right? The previous cycle, no pun intended, of like women's product was definitely very like pandery and like let's put a flower on it and like crappier spec. And you know,
because it was mostly men going like, what do women want? And then thinking maybe they wanted to do the right thing. I mean, they all want to sell bikes, right? So even if it's not the right thing, they're all trying to make money. And so,
yeah, like no one's trying to make a bad thing, but like, you know,
right. But it's like they hadn't done their homework. No one actually knew what women wanted because I'm not sure they asked them.
Right. Well, where do you find women that ride bikes if they're not necessarily welcome?
Yeah, right. So where's your focus group? Let's ask the women cyclists that don't exist yet.
Right.
Right. That's a good point. It's a good point.
Like I said, like I grew up in the hometown of like a huge classic road bike race, and I was an athlete, and it never occurred to me to race.
Right.
Even though I liked riding bikes and I liked competing and doing stuff, it wasn't until I was like out of school that I was like, oh yeah, I should race bikes. That sounds like a good idea.
You know, and I would say that that's also cycling generally, regardless of your gender, because I think a lot of people getting started in bike racing has often been a mystery, and it's a very high barrier to entry. Like it's mysterious and secret society, and it takes a long time to crack that. And I think it's gotten better. Cycling is much more accessible. I think for men and women, cycling is much more accessible. I feel like we're pointed in the right direction. I think it's painful right now because we're undoing things, and the undoing is painful. I think there are a lot of men who aren't interested in giving up the privilege and power, position of power that they have. And I think there's a lot of fear there, but I think it's inevitable. And I think as that change has started happening, as painful as it is right now, I do see things getting better. We're talking about things that we would never have talked about before or weren't talking about even just a couple of years ago. There's been so much social change in our lifetime, and a lot of it in the past 10 years. Social change I never thought I would see in my lifetime.
Well, I think there's also a lot more social accountability now, right? Like someone can't get away with saying something anymore because often they say it on the internet and then they get ostracized for it. Like look what happened to that Australian professional cyclist who made that comment about the whole British cycling thing. Like he deleted his Twitter account and no one is really going to remember what exactly he did riding, but they're going to be like, oh yeah, that was the guy that tweeted the sexist stuff and then deleted his account.
Yeah. He's actually British.
Oh, for some reason I thought he was Australian. My bad. But
still, yeah. British national champion, I think, actually, who said it. If it was Kennick, I think that's, if I'm remembering all that correctly. Yeah. I think he's the current British champion. So, I mean, he backpedaled, no pun intended, on that. But I think backpedaling on that, it's too late. It came out of your mouth. You could have just said nothing. About it.
Like, you could have just said nothing.
He felt strongly enough about it that he felt like he had to make a comment. Like, who do you think he was helping? And that kind of comment is proof of like, oh, there they go again. Like, you're obviously annoyed by it. You obviously have an opinion about it. You obviously wish they would just shut up about it. Like, sorry, bro, you blew it. And I think you're right. The response to that was the right response finally. And people cry political correctness all the time. And that always disappoints me too, because I just don't see the politics in it. What's political about it? Like, I see attacks on my friends. I don't see politics. There's no political agenda. There is personal. These are personal agendas. I see people being impacted, not politics. I don't care about the politics. I care about the people involved.
Right.
Let's talk about the most important topic that we have on our list for tonight, and we can close out on that topic. It's our traditional final question of the night. I gave you a heads up so you had some time to think about it. What is your favorite Prince song?
Okay, so I thought about this. I don't think you're going to like my answer, so I don't think I want to answer this.
Are you so afraid of my judgment, Cait, that you
Yes.
can't tell me your favorite Prince song? Come on.
Okay, if I have to pick one. Before I answer this question, I do want to point out that I was present for Adam's one and only Prince concert attendance. It happened.
Did I cry?
Oh, yeah.
I thought so.
I really like Starfish and Coffee, man.
Why would you think I wouldn't?
I don't know. You're like,
What?
you might think like that song is too like, I don't know. Who knows with you?
If
But
you
for
said,
me,
like, if you said like Daddy Pop, then I'd be like, oh, Cait, come on. Like, if you pick anything off like Diamonds and Pearls or the like that era, I'm gonna raise an eyebrow. But Starfish and Coffee it's a great choice, and that's a song that I don't think everyone knows, even though it's a popular song.
yeah, I really like that song. I think a little bit because it sounds like something that someone would say about me. Like, it's just like silly, right? Like, who says that? Like that's what they do.
Sometimes I wonder if the mates weren't in her lunchbox.
So yeah, that's my favorite one. It always makes me happy when I hear it.
Yeah. Did you see the version you did on the Muppet Show?
I did. I rewatched it this week.
That's a cute one. Yeah. No, I think Starfish and Coffee is a fabulous choice. There's some other great songs on that record too that I really like.
I was really worried because I was like, oh my God, what is the really important question? Like, and I I'm not looking at the
forgot.
list.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we already talked about like women stuff. So
no, I think it's gonna be the final question on I think on every podcast that will tie it all together. And I think, of course, we're still mourning. And I think some of us, is a big deal. And you obviously know what a Prince fan I am, but
so I have to tell this story while we're talking about Prince.
Yeah.
So for everyone like listening in, my boss Todd has been friends with Adam for a long time, and then we're also just like always on the internet. And the day that Prince died, I'm at my desk, headphones on, like cranking out Excel files, like whoa. And the way that my desk is situated, first of all, I'm just a jumpy person, so I really don't like people walking up behind me. But I was like in the zone, and Todd walks up right behind me, and maybe says my name, but again, headphones, in the zone. And then he like taps my shoulder. I basically fall out of my chair and yell, and I was like, like if you looked at my like heart rate, it probably like shot up to 200, and then Todd was like, Prince died. Is Adam okay? Like, you have to check on him. And I was like, oh my God. He scared the shit out of me for that. Which, honest to God, would happen. That I was just like, okay. And that's why I tweeted you, because I was like, that's how I found out that Prince died. Because Todd was like, is Adam okay? Prince is dead.
Which I'm laughing, but like, I got that from so many people, and I totally appreciated like that. I don't know how to describe it. Like, Prince is so important to me, right? As he is to many people. But I appreciated that people recognized that he was maybe more important to me than most people. That he was my absolute favorite, and then this was going to be like challenging for me, even though we're talking about someone that we don't know. Music is important. If you like music. If you live your life with a soundtrack, music really matters. And, I'm not going to cry when Morrissey dies. Yeah, Prince is something different, right? And
you sang a lot of Morrissey in the van, but not any Prince.
Well, it was a Morrissey time.
It was a Morrissey time, you're right. No,
yeah, we listened. There was a lot of Smiths at that moment in our lives. I love how Prince has affected so many people, and that people have Prince memories that they didn't realize that they had. And I think, as it turns out, everyone does have a Prince song, a favorite Prince song. And I think it's going to get us some very interesting answers down the road. And I think even as the the immediate memory of his death fades, I think we're going to continue to celebrate him, and people are going to rediscover him. And yeah, I think it's going to say something about people, what their favorite Prince song is. And so I think your choice is perfect. I might have even picked it for you if you'd asked me to get this. Great. I think it's a great choice. So you don't have to fear my judgment.
Okay.
I mean, you should generally fear my judgment. I think that's an appropriate way to live your life. In this case,
well, it's like the most important thing, right? Like, how can I pick the wrong Prince song while I'm on Adam Myerson's podcast show?
There's
like,
no wrong
you can't
answer.
do that.
No, it's just a reflection of you. So there's no wrong answer. You have to answer with your heart. And you
did. I answered with my heart. I knew the answer when you sent me the question. I was like, okay, I got this. I didn't even think about it. I knew.
You got this. Perfect way to end the show. Hashtag you got this. Thanks for coming on, Cait, and telling your story. We went a little long, but I think it was all very interesting. I hope people make it to the end here. And
I think people did. I think, looking at the numbers here, but I promised that we would be chatty, and chatty we were. So
yeah, I even made you cry.
You even made me cry, but I didn't make you cry. Shit.
No.
Another time.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm glad we got a chance to talk. This was good for us too. It's nice to get to see your face and catch up a little bit. So thanks.
Yeah. It was good to see Flynn on the practice run.
Don't give all the secrets away.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He goes to bed at 9:00, else I'd have him on the show more often, but maybe I'll keep him up. Maybe
well, I mean, he's like on the show still. You can see him. And the little
this should be up on iTunes shortly. Maybe it'll be up tomorrow for people who are, well, if you want to listen to it again, you'll be able to listen to it on iTunes tomorrow. All right. Thanks. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Adam.
Bye.